Good evening. It is 5:30 PM here in Cupertino, California. I am calling the Housing Commission together for its special meeting, December the 8th, 2025. Welcome to all of our guests here in the room, as well as any guests that are visiting us here. And hello to Usha, Commissioner Narayan, who is also at the meeting, but she is in another place, India. So therefore, we'll speak to you through the microphone like everyone else. And of course, good morning, good evening, Commissioner Jindi. So I will go ahead with the oh, I did want to tell people, because you don't probably know, my goal is to end the meeting at 7:30. So that's why we try to keep going. And the next is roll call. Can I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Jindi,
Here.
Commissioner Sripathi,
Not present.
Commissioner Joes,
Not present.
Vice Chair Narayan,
Aye.
Chair
Present.
Cunningham,
Present.
all present with Commissioner Sripathi and Commissioner Joes absent.
Thank you. Now we can move to the, oh, if there are any postponements,
We have none.
and it looks like here we can have oral no, item 1. I think I got ahead of myself. I apologize to all of you. We are on agenda item 1, which is approval of the minutes. So I will ask all the commissioners, I'll start with you, Commissioner Jindi, have you read the minutes? Do you have any questions or comments? No? Commissioner Ryan, do you have any questions or comments about the agenda? Previous
No.
agenda?
No,
No?
I'm good.
Okay, I have no questions or comments. Thank you. They were well written. Do I have a motion to approve agenda item 1? Second.
I can second.
Okay, motion is seconded that we will, that we're gonna vote to approve the minutes. Can you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Jindi,
Aye.
Commissioner Sripathi,
Not present.
Commissioner Joes,
Not present.
Vice Chair Narayan,
Aye.
Chair Cunningham.
Aye.
The motion carries with Commissioner Sripathi and Commissioner Joes absent.
Okay. We've already been told there were no postponements. Okay, so now where we have come to is oral communications. This is where anyone in the public can speak on any item that the Housing Commission has jurisdiction over. We have 3 minutes per person. So we have 2 people in the room. Do we have any people online who wish to speak?
We have no attendees on Zoom with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Whoever would like to go first, please. Or do they have to come here so they can be on the microphone?
Usually we have them stand right here. So our first speaker is Renee Pono Tapia. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. You have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, good evening, Chair and distinguished commissioners. My name is Kanadi and I'm a student planner interested in the challenge of housing affordability across Silicon Valley. I appreciate the commission's work and the opportunity to comment on agenda 3 and regarding.
Oh, sorry, is this on agenda item 3?
Yes,
Okay, so that wouldn't be oral communications, that would be public comments. So when we get to the agenda item, you'll be able to make your comments. Is yours on agenda item 3? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, we have no speakers in person and we have no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. So oral communications are now closed. And welcome to Commissioner Sripathi. Thank you for joining us. We started the meeting at 5:30 because we do have 3 because Commissioner Narayan is long distance.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's fine. Sorry, I got. We didn't happen. No problem.
Okay, so we have completed oral communications. Did we have any written communication?
We did not.
And there is no old business, so we will begin with new business. Agenda item 2. Policies and programs for tenant protections and anti-displacement for renters in market rate units. action is to recommend approval of tenant protection policy and anti-displacement programs for tenants residing in market rate units to city council for adoption. First, we'll have a presentation by staff, and then the commissioners all have a chance to ask questions for 3 minutes. Then the public has a chance to comment. Then there will be discussions by commissioners. Then there will be a vote. So to begin, would you make the presentation?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair and the Housing Commission. We're going to start with item number 2 tonight. The tenant protection study to consider anti-displacement measures for renters, living in market rate. So on the agenda, we're going to have 4 different sections for this item. First, we're going to talk about the background on displacement that these particular renters face living in market rate units. Next, we will include some recent studies being conducted both by the city as well as regionally through the county on this very issue. And then we will dive into strategies that we consider as part of the study, with some staff analysis as to whether or not some are more feasible than others, right? And then finally, we'll take for discussion, and we'll be asking you to make a recommendation for consideration, which policies we should continue to keep for further study to bring to the city council, right? For and for a strategy sometime in the summer of 2026. So first, we'll be about what started this effort. We have a housing element commitment strategy HE 3.3.6, right? Previously, we brought to the Housing Commission an anti-displacement measure specifically for renters who are residing in the BMR units, right? The affordability restricted units that were facing a restriction, right? And so they were basically facing a looming sort of rent increase the moment their rent increased. We suggested some strategies through the Housing Commission that got brought to the City Council. They chose to enact via a resolution, one of them, which was to create new priority point waitlists, right? In the BMR waitlist so that they could be rehomed at the highest priority. But that's not the only thing these strategies commit us to, right? They commit us to multiple steps if you read them. And another one is to study rent stabilization, tenant protection ordinances in California and displacement in Cupertino due to rising rents and evictions. Rising rents and evictions, right? This is within market rate units as well. So this is also something we're committed to in the housing element. We plan to study this tonight and later present an implementation plan to City Council if you guys recommend approval of moving forward with certain items. So first, let's go into the background. Cupertino has about 6,500 rental units in total. The average rent in 2025 is $3,900 per month. When you break that down by unit mix, you've got studios at 2,300, 1 bedroom, 1,200, 2 bedrooms at 4,100, 3 bedrooms at 5,100, and 4 bedrooms at 800. It's very expensive. When you look at the renters in Cupertino, 17.9% of them pay in between 30 to 50% of their income on just housing costs. This is what we would describe as being housing cost burdened, right? Normally, housing costs should be less than a third or less, right, of your total income. 16.2% of renters pay over half of their income on their housing costs. This is severely cost burdened, right? These are the people that are the highest risk of displacement when we face rent increases. So I just want to add, those are not inclusive percentages. So that's a 17% and then an additional 16%, right? That's a lot of renters. When you look at the rent distribution in Cupertino, you see that it's heavily skewed towards the high end. Over 50% of the rental units in Cupertino are above 3,000 or more per month, right? This is much, much more skewed compared to the rest of Santa Clara County and as much as the Bay Area. This tells us that yes, there is more we could be doing, right, to control rent fluctuations in Cupertino, much more. And secondly, when we look at the households that are most affected by rent increases, we see there's a very disproportionate share on lower income households. That far left column, 0 to 30% of area median income, this is what we would call extremely low income households. And you see that much 80% of them are cost burdened.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Commissioner
Nikki.
Jendi has a question.
Yeah.
Is there any way to zoom in those slides?
Oh, sorry, not while I'm sharing right now. I'll just have to tell you, it's 80%. 80% of them are cost burden. And then when you move up to the very low income category, 31 to 50%, it is 60%. 60% of them are cost burdened, right? Cost and severely cost burdened. And then finally, when you get to the low income, it is about half of them, right? Half of them are cost burdened. So really, when we talk about preventing displacement from rent increases and evictions, you're really talking about helping low income households, right? This is an issue primarily affected by low income households. And so it is a low income household program. This is why this is being brought to the Housing Commission, right? As opposed to, say, the Planning Commission. When you look at evictions and causes, specifically for Santa Clara County, in 2023, we saw 4,053 evictions in Santa Clara County. When you break that down and you look at the individual cities, the two Santa Clara County cities included in the study, Mountain View and San Jose, 96 and 97% of evictions within these cities were due to non-payment of rent. That means a household was not able to make their rent as part of their lease, right? And then so they face evictions. Right. So when you think about it, that means when you want to address displacement due to rising and displacement due to evictions, you're really solving one issue because they're one and the same, right? The rent has risen and they can't pay it, and that leads to eviction. So it's really one issue, right, that you're really trying to solve together. The Santa Clara County Planning Collaborative released a survey throughout the months of October and November. That's why we had to hold a special meeting today in December, where they surveyed people and asked them, according to them, right, what are the causes of housing instability and displacement? What are they most worried about, right? And what is causing them to be displaced? And from there, we have the preliminary data to share, right? The top responses for what people cited as their top concern for housing instability was lack of affordable housing at 30%, rising costs at 27%, and overcrowded living conditions at 13%. The largest concern for displacement cited by survey takers was neighborhood stability at 36%, loss of community culture at 33%, and their neighbors being forced to move at 31%. When asked what is the biggest factor to displacement that you see, people overwhelmingly responded lack of affordable housing at 61%. People had at the second high income people moving in at 42%, and then third, homes being sold to investors at 39%. And then finally, of the people who took the survey who were facing displacement or had already been displaced, when they were asked, why were you displaced? Overwhelmingly, the top reason was rent increase. Right, so this shows that there is priority, right, within the Santa Clara County to address these issues, specifically when it comes to displacement due to rent increases. And so we know that from our outreach, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you would like to move closer to the thing, there are some chairs down there, if you would like to move closer so you can see the chart.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks, just saw it on there. Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so basically all it is that we can tell from our outreach that this is a priority to our community, right? That like when it comes to addressing displacement, addressing rent increases is near the top. So now let's dive into the different strategies that we explored as part of this study. First, acquisition preservation. We include this because it is one of the numerous study items, right, that is in the housing element, so we must include it. This process is the idea for the city to purchase units and then re-restrict them, right, within the BMR program, that way to keep them affordable. And right away, we see some issues with this, right? First of all, these are rental units and they cannot be individually bought or sold without condomization, which is a whole process to itself, which means the city would have to buy entire buildings to preserve them, right? This dramatically increases the costs of this strategy, right? For just an example, Bell and Terrace, right? It's a 2025 sale proposal, acquisition proposal that's going on right now. It's $66.7 million. We have $1 million in the BMR fund right now. So for these reasons, we decided maybe this strategy is not the most financially feasible, but we included it anyways, just to show that we did. All right, next up, This is also an enumerated strategy that is listed in the housing element. Study rent stabilization. This strategy is very simple. Institute a price control to limit rent increases. There are two state laws that we have to keep in mind when we study this, right? Number one, AB 1482, also known as the Tenant Bill of Rights in 2019. It includes a state rent control of 5% plus CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, right? It's cost of living adjustment, or 10% as the maximum, right? So that's already in effect for all of California. Anything that a city would have to enact has to be more protective, equally or more protective than that, right? Next, we have to consider Coastal Hawkins, right? Coastal Hawkins bans cities from enacting rent control on single-family homes, on condos, on townhomes, and apartments after 1995, which means any kind of city rent stabilization would really only be able to affect about 50%, 57% of the multifamily housing, right? Because the rest of it has been built either more recently or is in a form that basically it cannot be rent controlled. So several other Bay Area cities have successfully enacted local rent control ordinances. We'll get into that. The staff recommendation is if this is pursued, then pursue it in tandem with some other strategy, right? Because it can only help 57%. So it's incomplete on its own. Now let's take a look at what some other cities have enacted. Overall, you see some things kind of replay, right, as a common practice, right, throughout the different cities in the Bay Area. Right? Very commonly, you see either 5% rent increase, which is whatever they're currently being charged, no more than 5% of that current increase, or an increase tied to CPI, right, Consumer Price Index, or the cost of living. You see some people going 80% CPI, some people going 70%, but a lot of people chose 60% CPI. And then unit type, right? It slightly differs from city to city to what type of multifamily housing that they apply to. A lot of people say 3+ units, right? Some people say 2+ units. At the end of the day, multifamily is defined as anything 2+ units or more. So, I mean, staff's recommendation is that if you want to basically make something aligned with the rest of the city, that is the most protective you can, and probably 60% of CPI as a price limit, and then making it apply to all 2+ unit buildings that are before 1995, right? And then finally, there's one more column, commission. I'll explain what that is. So some places, they have a special rent board, right? That acts as the governing body to basically certify what are the rents for each coming year. Some of them, right? Not all of them. Technically, it's calculated, right? Because it's a math formula for what it is. So it's not entirely clear if you need a commission to certify it, if it's put in statute, what the rent increase has to be. So for this reason, we put maybe you don't need a special commission just to make that calculation, and we put no. So that would be staff's recommendation. All right, next strategy, rent mediation / review. This is kind of like a softer version of the previous strategy. Facilitate compromise for rent increase disputes. There's two parts to this strategy. First one is to expand our current housing programs, the ones that you guys see every year through the CDBG and HSG programs, for rent mediation, right, and enforcing housing law. So if we had a local ordinance, they could be enforcing a local Cupertino rent control ordinance. If we don't, they could just be enforcing the state AB 1482, right? Some cities add a second step to this, where they create a rent review board that kind of acts as a board of appeals. If things are not able to be mediated at that sort of nonprofit level, they get risen up to the rent review board, who hears the issue and makes a recommendation. We did a survey. We talked to other cities that have this process. Overall, their feedback is as such. They say the program part, where you fund a nonprofit for the mediation, that part is very helpful, right? Because they have dedicated staff to do this. And most things get solved at that level. The rent review board, maybe not as much, right? Because usually by that time, most, like they've already kind of, first of all, the rent review board cannot make binding decisions, they're advisory. So the landlord is free to disregard the rent review board's recommendations. And then also, like, by the time it reaches them, like most things don't, they really only hear 1 to 2 cases per year. So our recommendation, right, if we were to pursue this strategy, expand a contract with Project Sentinel or a similar organization for rent mediation. All right, next, eviction slash.
Mediation was negotiation.
Yes, yeah, they basically handle disputes between tenants and landlords to settle on what is appropriate rent increases, yeah.
Might I ask the commissioners hold their questions till after this?
Okay. All right, next strategy is eviction slash legal defense. This is to prevent evictions and to defend tenants that are facing evictions, right? We currently don't really have a program that quite fits this, except for maybe Sala, but it's to add a new housing program to fund low-income legal aid organizations to represent tenants, right, that get served an unlawful detainer for basically their eviction. So the whole goal of this is to try to move to settlements rather than facing an eviction where they face harsh penalties, right? And sometimes settlements can include things like relocation assistance, right? Maybe some forgiveness of some back rent, right? Overall, it's about harm reduction, creating more favorable outcomes when the worst happens. San Francisco and San Mateo counties saw a 31% decrease in court-ordered evictions when they offered legal aid. So that's significant, right? This would serve about 1,260 houses in Santa Clara County if we were to see a similar reduction. That would be very big. So staff's recommendation, if this strategy is to be pursued, to add a contract with either like a Bay Area Legal Aid, a Legal Aid Society in Santa Clara County, or any similar organization for this type of service, right? And we can see that when you look at current attorney capacity for tenant legal services, Santa Clara County tenants are the least served in all of the Bay Area, right? The attorneys serving Santa Clara County have the highest caseload of all the county, 480 cases per attorney, That's unheard of, right? So what would a contract do, right? It would essentially help them expand their own attorney capacity to help lower caseload, help see more people, right? That's how they would help serve. All right, next, just cause terminations, trying to limit owner cause displacement, right? So when it comes to eviction, very briefly, there are three types of evictions: at fault, no fault, and no cause. No cause evictions, there's no examples you can give, right? Because that's when a landlord just evicts their tenant and they don't give a cause. That is outlawed, right? In AB 1482, right? And then between at fault and no fault, there's like certain guidelines. If there is a no fault eviction, right? This is something that happens when the tenant hasn't necessarily broken the terms of their lease, but they just can't keep living in the unit anymore. Let's say the landlord wants to do a bunch of renovations, right? So they got to move them out. Or the landlord wants to move a family member, right? So this is like a no fault eviction. In these circumstances, AB 1482 requires that the landlord provide 1 month fair market rent as relocation assistance for a no fault eviction. But it also expressively encourages cities to adopt more protective ordinances on their own, right? So most cities have gone forward and created their own just cause protection local ordinances. And this would be a necessary component to include in a local like tenant protection ordinance, Cupertino, right? If we want to close loopholes and ensure enforceability, right? Because if a landlord has the ability to just enact displacement, then they can kind of avoid everything else that we're talking about. So for this study, we're just including the ones in Santa Clara County because many cities have gone forward and done this on their own, right? And so we can already see some best practices forming, right? When we look at what they include. The most common thing is that instead of 1 month fair market rent as relocation assistance, to increase that to 3 months fair market rent. Why 3, you might be asking, right? Because typically the cost of moving into a new apartment, you got to give 1 month for deposit, first month, last month, right? 3 months to move into a new apartment. So that's how you get that number, right? And then they also close some other loopholes, right? So you see that like AB 1482, it only applies to people that have been living in a unit for more than 12 months. Many cities, they close that minimum, they shorten it so that it applies to all renters, right? Regardless of how long they've been living in there. It carves out, it removes the exemptions that currently exist in the AB 1482, which currently does have exceptions for single family homes and townhomes. It removes, some cities have removed restrictions on remodel evictions, right? Because some landlords are able to get away with basically just doing a substantial remodel and kind of avoiding it. Increasing notice times for Ellis Act. Someone sent in a comment, I think, what is Ellis Act? Ellis Act is when a landlord removes a rental unit entirely from the market because they just want to keep it for themselves. So increasing the notice time for that. And then also some other protections, right? So at the very end, restriction on owner move-in, you might see that it includes that the owner must be a natural person. What does that mean? It means they can't be a corporation, right? Moving in, they have to be an actual human being that actually owns the unit. So these are some ways that various cities have kind of tightened up on just cause eviction protection to really bolster kind of like their own local ordinances. And that's how they can include relocation assistance, right? So we recommend Cupertino to adopt many of these protections, right, at the bottom, close a lot of these loopholes, and also to increase relocation assistance to 3 months fair market rent if they were to pursue this strategy. All right, next, we included relocation assistance specifically in response to rent increases as a separate strategy because this is technically something that also exists. We previously studied this as part of the BMR rental expiration study as well. The only reason why, though, is because AB 1480 expressly prohibits rental control for BMR units, right? Affordable restricted units. So we try to find an alternative path to try to disincentivize rent increases for them, right? In a sense, it really functions very similar to rent control, but instead of being a price limit, it's an incentive, right? But if you think about it, that means it's not really as protective as a measure. Because if there's enough financial gain for a landlord to displace someone anyways, then they will, right? So for that reason, it is not really widely pursued by other cities. Most cities, they prefer to do the rent control method. We think that relocation assistance is better suited as a function of just cause eviction protection, because also eviction protection will be able to help protect the BMR tenants as well, right? Because they will be facing evictions as well if they cannot pay rent in their expiring units, right? Just as an example. So it's really much more protective that way. So we're recommending not pursuing this particular strategy, but instead including relocation assistance just as a function of eviction protection. Now for this commission, we are including what is the per unit assistance payment we would be suggesting, right? What does 3 months fair market rent look like? It very much depends on the size of your unit. But there it is, right? This is what is published by HCD as fair market rents for the units based on county. And so you take that number, you multiply it by 3. And so that's your relocation payment you're looking at. If you stay in a 1-bedroom, that's about $9,000, right? Right, the final strategy we considered was deposit fee regulations. This was suggested to us by a former housing commissioner, Vice Chair He, which was to try to add requirements to try to limit unexpected fees, right? So this would be something that could be potentially included within the tenant protection ordinance as another factor. What this is requiring primary source documentation before tenants can be charged maintenance costs, right? Now, will that be enough to prevent displacement? Maybe. It's unclear, but it would definitely lower housing costs overall, right? By limiting unexpected expenses. So this could be something pursued kind of like before in tandem with other tenant protective ordinance kind of strategies in like a sort of combined strategy. So, staff analysis. We do suggest that under housing programs, we pursue rent median, as the program part only, not the rental board, and legal defense. Both as strategies, we see these both as strategies we're pursuing, but just keeping in mind that these will require funding commitments, right? In order to be enacted long term. So this will be something we will need to take to city council to ask for essentially funding. And then secondly, underneath tenant protection ordinances for policies, we suggest including rent stabilization, just cause protections with relocation assistance included within that as a function. And then deregulations are strategies worth to continue studying for a potential tenant protection ordinance. Now anything that gets suggested by the commission here tonight, right, is what we will move forward with for further study. And then we will present to city council with an implementation plan, if that is what is recommended. That being said, Why don't we open it up now to the commission for any clarifying questions?
Thank you, thank you, Nikki, for that really fine, presentation, and also for the plan that you sent us ahead of time. All of that is very helpful. So we're gonna open the floor now, for the first round of discussion, 3 minutes for each commissioner. And does anybody want to start with questions? Lucia, I'll look at Lucia, if you can raise your hand, Lucia, if you, have a question at this time. And also you can to speak now, your questions. Sounds like Commissioner Sherpathi would like to speak. Go ahead.
In one of your second slides, you said something about neighborhood strategy or something. What does that really mean?
Sorry, let me go ahead and go back.
If you go back,
I think it was underneath the study, right?
yeah, no need to study, neighborhood stability study.
Neighborhood stability. It's just this idea of like, will your neighborhood remain kind of inform and function like the way it was when you came, right? Or will it fundamentally change? Like, will you lose community? Or, you know? Yeah.
Just because it became expensive.
Yeah, yeah, basically, right?
Alright, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. Any other questions, clarifying questions?
Commissioner Shindi, have a question?
So is this presentation the same as the one you received in the email?
Oh, I'm not sure if there was an email that went out with this one.
There was an attachment with a report that you.
Oh, the staff report? The staff report and this presentation are based off the same information, yes.
So, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
I believe if you can go back to the slide when the recommendations for the city of Cupertino to secure 5% increase cap, is that correct?
Oh, so we recommended 60% of CPI because that's tied to cost of living increases.
Okay,
Because if you think about it, right? Inflation's a thing, right? And like if price goes way up or down, and someone's rent is tied to what they're currently receiving as rent, right? It doesn't really account for like the greater economic conditions. So I mean, we suggested CPI, but I mean, like, of course, if the commission thinks it should be tied to what they're currently charged for rent, like that's up for debate, right?
seems like many cities in the Bay Area have kind of embraced this strategy to by 60%. This is kind of almost closer to what the state regulation is, and I wonder if city of Cupertino can kind of work on maybe providing a more, saying something lower than the percentage that the state
Oh.
states.
I see. So let me clarify. The state's current policy is 5% of rent plus CPI. So it's 5 plus something else. It's something quite high, actually. That or 10%. So all the cities that are listed here, they all have a more protective ordinance than the state. Yeah.
I would like to add a question to Commissioner Shindi. So we can actually authorize, or recommend authorizing something less than the 5% of rent, which is the state level. And also a different amount of the CPI, which theirs is limited at 10%. So a total of, well.
It's either 5% plus CPI or 10. Yeah, either 5 or more.
Recommend either, because I realize now I see Oakland is 3% of rent. But then they say or
60% of
60%
Yeah.
CPI.
Yeah.
Oh, and all of that is or, it's not and.
Yeah. So that's an important distinction, right? Saying or instead of and, which is inherently lower. And that is the thing, right? With local rent control, it has to be more protective than state rent control. If it's not as protective as state rent control, then it's not enforceable. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
So do all units come under rent control?
No, just the ones built after 1995, right? Well,
Okay, just after that.
yeah, it slightly depends on the city, right? So some of them, they go a little
Older.
older, like, yeah, but because of Costa Hawkins, 1995, you can't be anything newer than 19.
I have a question about the funding. There's no estimates in here of how much funding. It would
Yeah.
require, excuse me, to do either of the actions we're talking about, whether it's the legal or whether it's the mediation. Is that something that you are thinking you're going to be discussing at another study session in the future, or is that something
So
you
so
want to address today?
if those programs are recommended to be pursued, then this would basically move on for further study and we can start talking about dollar amounts, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
this is also, I should add, highly dependent on how many other cities also want to do this. Because they do a lot of the stuff at the county, like at a regional level anyways, so you get economies of scale, you know what I mean? Like if multiple people want to pursue this at once, and then we can maybe like get into a joint contract, stay with a legal organization, right? That affects the cost. Yeah, and right now there are a lot of concurrent actions that are happening in a lot of other cities. There are also simultaneously studying displacement because the study happened right in October and November. So we're also kind of like, we're all kind of seeing who else, right, decides to move forward with certain things.
But is Cupertino on the higher end of rent increases or?
Oh, as we saw, Cupertino has a dramatic skew towards higher end.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, yes, I would say so, yes. Yes,
Yeah, so 5% of any rents would be higher than any place else, plus 60% of
yeah,
CPI would also be higher because you're putting it on that base.
exactly, yeah,
So it's all gonna be.
yeah,
high.
yeah.
So, quick question. We see that providing counseling can reduce up to 31% of people being evicted. How does it translate in dollar amount? What would it cost for somebody to have that representation in Cupertino?
The good news is that if they are a qualified household, a low income household that is facing, a landlord that's doing an illegal rent increase, they would be able to be serviced for free. For free through the program.
For free for people
this is
without
passed.
this.
If this program exists,
Goes for.
yeah, that helps able to receive tenant legal services.
My question is more how much is gonna cost the city to
Oh,
provide that service?
so that's the same question as Connie's basically, right? It's highly dependent on not just if we move forward, but if other cities also move forward, right? Yeah, yeah.
I guess I would like to make the comment if you guys had not seen it, it just flashed out to me when we were talking about Santa Clara. Santa Clara County is by far the worst county in providing legal services to low income people. Which means that since they can't afford an attorney, they don't have an attorney, so therefore there's nobody to talk on their behalf to the landowner, and that pretty much means that the landowner doesn't have to argue his case at all. And so I don't know about you, but I've lived in Santa Clara County a long time. I thought it was a great county, you do lots of things. Blah, blah. And so I was told to see that our Santa Clara County was doing so poorly, and it is my hope that more than just one city, us being one of them, would consider these changes, because that's, I would think, unsatisfactory just from a county perspective that we could be that far off. End of comment.
Yeah.
So, can you go to the last slide?
Yes.
The one that you are recommending?
Yes.
So if I understood correctly, you kind of, the staff is recommending for the bullet number one, other than number two, or the,
All the above, right?
all the.
Yeah, to be included in an implementation plan. I'm not sure if we can do all 5 at once, right? But at least creating some kind of roadmap to work towards it throughout the planning period, right? Of the housing development planning period, right? Like do like maybe like 2 a year. Or something like that. Yeah, something like that.
So relocation assistance for the large rent increase was rejected by the city, by the council for the 2025 DMR
Yes.
because of legal concerns, right? So
Yes.
What has changed that somehow we believe that the same concept would be now be more enforceable for market rate units?
That's a great question, right? So we previously tried to tie rental relocation assistance to a rental link. And we were not sure if that would be enforceable. Number one, like, does that run too close to rent control, right? Which is outlawed by AB 422, but also because of the fact that it only applies to certain rental units as opposed to all of them. We now have relocation assistance tied to eviction, right? And eviction is different, even though, but we know from our data that protecting from evictions is also protecting from rent increase, right? So by tying it to evictions, we can basically serve people the same way, only now it's not related to rent increase, right? It's not rental control, and it applies to all units across the market, which is something that many other cities have been able to enact, right? With lots of success. So we're very confident now that this would be a much more legally enforceable form of relocation assistance, right? When it's tied to just cause eviction protection.
Just clarify on, because that was great. Thank you for seeing that question. We have rent stabilization in there in number 2.
Yes.
So how does that not what you were just talking about in regards to the evictions?
Sorry?
The tenant protection ordinance includes rent stabilization, and that's something that's required by 1482.
So
But when you were talking about your answer to, you said that we're tying this to evictions, so it's not rent controlled.
yeah,
Is rent stabilization not rent controlled?
it is. Sorry, I think I've confused you. I'm sorry. So previously, right, we were asking why wasn't this pursued for the expiring BMR
Right.
rents tenants? And the thing is, for BMR tenants, you cannot enact rent control because of AB 1482.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're making a distinction
Yeah.
between.
That's
Two
why
types.
it couldn't go on before,
Okay.
but that's why it's okay that we can do it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make a comment.
Sure.
Thank you for including the commissioners and recommendation
Yes.
for the landlord to provide some documentation of the costs that are due to justify withholding from the deposit. Have we reviewed this under the legal obligations, whether is preempted by the state law or whether do we have the authority to add this requirement?
Do we have
Does the city have the authority to add this as a requirement?
we can study it further, right? If this is something that the commission recommends we include, then the next step would be like, all right, like looking at inaction, right? Kind of like similar like to looking at like how much money would it cost to run those programs. We could start proposing stuff with our, city attorney's office to review to see if it's legally enforced.
My last comment.
Yeah.
So you did say that the tenant survey only had the preliminary, just the initial results, when the final results are going to be provided, especially including the Cupertino results.
We suspect in the new year, January. And yeah, so the preliminary results are countywide. The final results will have breakdown by city. And so we'll have more complete data in the new year, but what we currently have is very indicative, at least of Santa Clara County. So that's why we feel comfortable sharing it.
So ideally, you should have that result before you present this to the city council.
Yes, yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Is that the, I'm not sure if she's asking about the same thing that I had asked about. Because there's 2 reports, right? There's the one that we did here for the city, and then there's the one that SSCC did for the county.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's a
is there
certain.
a link for us to be able to access it and a date that we can access?
Yeah, it'll be shared to the Santa Clara County Planning Collaborative website once the final results are public.
Okay, and so you're gonna provide that link to, I didn't see that link on the presentation this
It
evening.
doesn't exist yet because they
Oh.
haven't. But I can email it to you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How would rent stabilization or just cost reduction work? Is it like,
Yeah, so rent stabilization. you set, right, you calculate rent increases based on whatever your enacted ordinance says, right? And then once a year, we would have like a meeting, maybe of the housing commission or just by staff, where we release like what is the established rent increases for the city that people have to adhere to, right? And then you have your nonprofit organization, Project Sentinel, whoever, essentially acting as enforcers for that. So that when people complain that they get rent increases beyond that, we can refer them basically to an enforcement, right, of Project Sentinel or whoever else. Similarly to just cause eviction protection, right? When people receive an eviction and it's for a no fault reason, right? Say tenant the landlord just wants to move like their son into the unit, right? That they didn't do anything wrong. Well, then they would refer themselves, well, we would refer them if they call the city to a legal aid organization, right? Who can then defend them, but also enforce just cause protection eviction, enforce the legal cases. Okay, so they work in tandem, right? You have the ordinances and then you have your organizations enforce them.
Okay, I'm going to say we've had some time. I want to ask, if we're finished here, or at least questions, we haven't done deliberations yet, but we would like to have the public make comments. And this seems like a good time. Can you call for public?
We have no speakers in person and no hands raised on Zoom share.
We are gonna comment after this.
Oh, for item number 2?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. One sec while I bring up the timer.
And I just noticed if you want to be on camera, you have to move that a little bit. So when you're standing, you actually don't get any FaceTime. So it's up to you.
Okay, for our first speaker, we'll have Renee Pono Tapia. So you can come on up or staying seated.
Okay.
So, my comments are intended to offer supported data and policy options. And hopefully they can assist the city in meeting its critical, very low income housing goals. So the data that Cupertino's progress suggests an immense challenge. The city's current permitting rate toward the very low income target of 1,193 units is estimated to be around 1.8%. And this indicates a significant hurdle that current mechanisms are not resolving. The limited existing inventory compounds this challenge. Your own program materials confirm that BMR rental stock is small at only about 142 units. And with this extremely low turnover, with an extremely low turnover. Furthermore, the anticipated delivery of only 12 new BMR ownership opportunities over the next 2 years highlights a major gap in production. When combined with recent developments such as proposed 60% reduction in affordable units at the Valco Rise project, you need to generate replacement funding. The need to generate replacement funding becomes very important to ensure compliance with the housing element. So I recognize that generating this capital is difficult, but to successfully bridge the funding gap for very low income housing, I suggest the commission consider recommending the exploration of dedicated, sustainable, and increased local revenue streams for the BMR Affordable Housing Fund. Specifically, I suggest the commission explore maximizing 2 existing pools, commercial linkage fee, reevaluating the potential increase the commercial linkage fee on new commercial development could ensure that developments appropriately fund the housing demand created by new jobs. And inclusionary zoning. Recommending an increase in the inclusionary zoning requirement, particularly in emphasizing the production of units affordable at the very low income level. These suggestions are offered in the spirit of supportive planning and ensuring the city can successfully house all segments of its community. And thank you for your time and dedication.
Okay, and our next speaker is Mike.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maya Sue. And I'm a student at Menlo College, and I'm here tonight as part of my civic engagement capstone project on housing affordability displacement in Silicon Valley. My research mostly focuses on Menlo Park, but I chose to attend this Cupertino Housing Commission meeting because of the many challenges I studied: rising rents, limited affordable housing, and community displacement, which are all regional issues Cupertino faces as well. Across Silicon Valley, including here in Cupertino, job growth has outpaced the supply of affordable housing. This pushes essential workers, students, families, and longtime residents farther away from the communities they support. Rising costs also contribute to longer commutes, heavier traffic, and fewer opportunities for people who want to remain connected to local schools and jobs. Cupertino's housing commissioners affect longtime residents, teachers, healthcare workers, and service employees, and also students and young professionals. And lastly, local employers who need workers nearby. And these groups help the city function every day. Based on my research and I've developed some solutions, more like strategies that other nearby cities have kind of gone through that are relevant to Cupertino as well, which was strengthen inclusionary housing requirements, expand partnerships with nonprofit affordable housing developers, explore community land trusts for affordable homes, improve tenant protections to prevent displacement, and support transit-oriented mixed income development. And yeah, these are all strategies that work nearby nearby cities that align with regional housing goals. I really encourage the commission to preserving long-term affordability and anti-displacement as we continue to move forward with the housing planning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
We have no remaining speakers in person and no hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to our public who have taken their time to make comments here this evening. We appreciate that. Now we would want to pull the conversation back to the commissioner, Commissioner Narayan, who is online, to talk about the recommendations that we would like to make to council on this particular topic. So, does anyone have comments about the recommended strategies that the staff has presented?
I think since we've already had comments, if anyone wants to make a motion on what recommended strategies we want to see included. And then if anyone wants to second that, I guess.
Okay. So just a clarification, so it isn't just we can change the motion from what's on it.
Yeah, you can change the motion. You could
Okay.
motion to just concur with staff recommendation, or you could motion to say like, we want this, not this, or something like that.
Okay, because maybe what we can do is put out, this is the recommended action to recommend approval of tenant protection policy and anti-displacement programs for tenants residing in the market rate units to city council for adoption. And I assumed when I read that it basically included all of it. So if we motion that, then we can make amendments to it from here.
Yeah. If you want to just concur with staff, you motion to like concur with staff's recommendation. If you want to recommend something else, you can recommend something else.
Okay,
Yeah, just
so I just made the motion. Do I hear a second?
Can we add something like,
After the second? Yeah, after the second, then we'll discuss. And we can add things from there.
wait.
Yeah, wait.
You make a motion on which policies to pursue. Yeah. So like in the motion, like enumerate the policies that you want to pursue, please.
Oh,
either it's bullet 1, 2, both?
You just list the names for.
go ahead, why don't you, go ahead? I was thinking a whole different thoughts, want to get back.
No,
Right here.
there's one way to city owned property, but I'm not sure.
If you want to do friendly amendments, right, that's totally fine. Yeah. You can include other things too.
Okay. Yeah, so I would like to recommend both housing programs and the tenant protection, and the possibility to see if the city can actually have city-owned property. Because it probably has a longer impact, because we can control we can control the tenancy
Mhm.
rather than having to depend on this.
Okay. So can I repeat this back just so I understand? Is your motion to pursue both of the housing programs listed, the rent mediation and eviction defense, as well as the three listed tenant protection ordinance strategies, rent stabilization, just cause protections, and fee regulations, in addition to also taking a look into city-owned properties
Right.
and how to utilize that resources? Okay, thank you.
Okay, excuse me, when I had been thinking about this, we have a number of things on this chart here. And I asked the question about that we could make ours less, like 3% of, and whatever, of CPI. I guess one question, what if I good at the time to know? Well, I guess what I would think that because we have such much higher rents, that we should put in, instead of 5% increase is okay. 5% of 3,000 is a whole lot more than 5% of 1,000. So I was thinking maybe we would put in, it's kind of a hard thing to guess, but at 2%. Start at 2%, see how viable that is. And then the increase, because that's either or, right?
Yes.
So that we could have ours at 2, because I don't have knowledge of how much the increase is each year for our rents. 10%? Do you have a sense for that?
It's hard to say, right? They can't be more than 10 because of AB 1482.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, without looking individually at the specific units, I can't really make a determination.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like- maybe-
The study would take care of it. So
maybe what you
Just
want to
put-
do is make a friendly amendment
friendly amendment.
to Commissioner Sripati's motion
Mhm.
to also recommend pursuing a lower maximum rent increase through rent
Yes.
stabilization.
Yes,
Okay?
I would like to do that. Thank you.
Okay.
So can I just ask, what exactly did he recommend? These things all up here?
All of these things, as well as also taking a look into city-owned property to see how we can leverage those resources for this effort.
Okay, I have to admit, I don't know what that is, but I guess you do, so that's all right. Okay, very good. You have anything else you'd like to add?
I just echo that sentiment that perhaps the city can pursue lesser percentage to cap. Oh, if we go by the average of 3,900.
Mhm. Yeah.
To 3% to make it at least $100 more, correct?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So overall, it's gonna make another 1,200 a year. At least I'd like for our city to be more generous and match the better, programs or the better regulations other cities like the Oakland has.
Right, but I think by changing it to 2% increase, that's actually better.
Right.
Oh, okay, I was not totally.
Yeah.
And I said I echoed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great, I didn't understand it.
Is that a second for that motion then, for that amendment?
A second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can Commissioner Zindi please repeat her motion?
So Commissioner Jindy seconded Chair Cunningham's friendly amendment to Commissioner Sripati's motion. So the full motion right now is as follows. Recommending to continue studying all of the above that is listed on the slide, which is the top 2 housing programs, rent mediation and legal defense, as well as the 3 listed strategies for the tenant protection ordinance, which is rent stabilization, just cause protections and fee regulations, as well as also studying city-owned property as a resource for how it can be used for anti-displacement. And then the friendly amendment of Chair Cunningham was to also explore a lower, more protective maximum rent stabilization policy.
Got it. So the motion is to pass all 3 recommendations, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
with
Yeah, with the commissioner, yeah.
Sorry, and just for the record, Sripati, do you accept the friendly amendment?
Is it?
Well, given the
Yeah, Commissioner Dindy,
Aye.
Commissioner Sripathi,
Aye.
Commissioner Joe's absent, Vice Chair Ryan,
Aye.
Chair Cunningham.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously with Commissioner Joe's absent.
Excellent. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and dive into item 3. This one will be comparatively a lot more simple, right? So the commission previously suggested that we explore an increase to our human services grant funding in response, right, to the uncertainties with federal funding, specifically CDBG for our housing programs. And so we brought that proposal for you here today to consider. First, let's go into a little bit of context, right? On May 2nd, 2025, the White House released a discretionary budget that proposed the entire elimination of the CDBG and home programs. And then on July 17th and July 24th, the appropriations committees of the House and Senate passed conflicting bills, some that funded CDBG, but one of them that did not fund home. It should be noted that any kind of funding decrease that's proposed would impact all housing programs, right? Because it effectively lowers the amount of funding for the entire system and requires all the subrecipients to compete for less funding. It is also worth mentioning federal government shutdown. Right, on October 1st, the federal government entered a shutdown after Congress failed to pass appropriations legislations for FY 26. This is as of November 2025, it should be amended to as of December 2025. The city still has not received its FY 25-26 CDBG allocation of $354,000. We've been funding that money from our local funds, right? Given this, it is worth exploring alternative measures, right, to ensure the long-term stability of our housing programs. So let's talk about the funding gap, and I'm going to pass this slide on off to Evelyn Mays, our assistant housing coordinator, to talk about the CDBG programs.
Thanks, Nikki. So our current three CDBG grant recipients are Live Oak Adult Daycare, West Valley Community Services Care Program, that's the community access to resources and education, and Rebuilding Together Silicon Valley. Live Oak Adult Daycare is a specialized program for frail, low-income seniors. The adult daycare program activities include recreation, exercise, companionship, and nutritious meals. The program receives an average contract award of $19,000 per year and serves on average 15 Cupertino households. Next, we have West Valley Community Services Care Program. This program provides assistance to low-income and homeless individuals and families in Cupertino. The program connects residents to community resources and provides emergency financial assistance for rent and utilities. They also provide access to their market for nutrition and groceries. This includes their mobile parking market, case management services, as well as help accessing public services such as CalFresh and Medi-Cal. The program receives an average annual grant of $37,000 and serves approximately 100 Cupertino residents annually. Finally, we have Rebuilding Together Silicon Valley. This program helps preserve affordable housing by providing safety, accessibility, and mobility repairs and critical home repairs for low-income Cupertino homeowners. And this is at no cost to the recipients. They're funded at an average of $96,000 per year, and they serve approximately 7 Cupertino households every year. So in order for the city and these organizations to preserve these programs at their current service level, the city would need to make up $152,000 for the funding gap that's been identified.
Thank you, Evelyn. So next, we should also mention the home funding gap, right? The city indirectly receives home funding, which is a affordable housing kind of stimulant grant through the Santa Clara County Consortium, right? They administer this program as a lump sum with other participating cities in this consortium. We kind of pull the money together in order to make this program work. Because of this, it is really more administratively feasible to implement any kind of funding increase for home funding through the county, because we can't quite parse out, just how much is Cupertino's versus, say, another city. But we do know what the total is, right? So we are not suggesting that we address the home funding gap today. We're looking and focusing on CDBG, and we're recommending that the county explore funding increase, right, for home funding. Now let's talk about HSG impacts, right? So the city currently provides local funds. We call it the Human Services Grant in the amount of $129,000 plus a CPI increase to supplement housing program funding. In other words, for all those programs, the city should be also funding but can't because of limited funding. The city supplements that with HSG, right? So it would be thematically and logically consistent to use the HSG program to cover this funding gap. And it should be noted that without CDBG, all those previously mentioned subrecipients would now have to compete for HSG with the additional current subrecipients of HSG, meaning all housing programs would be impacted. And we would expect to see across the board reductions in deliverables and clients served, right? It's worth mentioning that we are, of course, not the only city that is affected by uncertainties from the federal government, right? Other cities that are also exploring using local funding to replace the CDBG program as a contingency, County of Santa Clara, cities of Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, and Mountain View. And if you think about it, there's really only one other option if you're not doing that, which is just contracts, because you don't have money, which the city of Santa Clara has chosen to do, which we hope not to do, right? So to reiterate, what we're recommending to stabilize the city's housing programs, to recommend an increase in the annual HSG allocation by $152,000 for a grand total of $281,000 with an annual CPI increase in order to ensure the long-term stability of housing programs. We've prepared a resolution that will be attached to the staff report, right? And so this would be a motion to approve that resolution to City Council for the above, for the above on the screen funding increase. So now let's open this up to the commission for clarifying.
And thank you, Ziggy, for your presentation. That helped consolidate my thinking about it. So now is the time to have questions from the commissioners. So is anybody have questions they would like to ask at this time?
The 152 is an increase, but what is the other 100 and the remaining, so it's basically 130s. From nine with 129,000.
Yeah, that's 129 plus 152. That makes 281.
Okay.
Yeah,
129 is what we spend currently on our.
on our HSG programs right now. Yeah. So what we're looking for is a dollar for dollar replacement, right? This is just to keep the same amount of funding stable. Yeah.
Because of the CDBG.
Because of uncertainties of CDBG, right? Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
And so that funding will come from the city or the county?
It would come from the general fund of the city, right? Yeah. So normally the city allocates from the general fund into the HSG program. What we're asking for essentially is just,
Increase.
yeah.
I guess I would make the comment that it certainly seems like a very important thing for us to recommend as a housing commission. Because, excuse me, the people who are funded by CDBG funds are some of our most vulnerable residents in the city. And this is this is budget time right now, so there's an opportunity to have the city look at the entire budget and be able to think in terms of what they're trying to do. So it's a good time to ask, and I think asking for the full amount is important, simply because as Evelyn even described, the various services, we're talking about our most vulnerable citizens. That's it. I guess I would, I don't have any particular questions, but does anybody else have a comment before we call the motion?
Does the city do the poll or is there an option for it? Yes. I'm just curious, I don't know how the city works.
Well,
How do they allocate, like, do they just say yes, or we'll only give you 100,000, you manage?
so actually this commission is actually the body that manages those funding allocations.
Right.
And you guys will be hearing that in March for some more additional ones, but there's a lump sum, there's a total, a bunch of different nonprofits will apply to a NOFA, and then you guys actually score those applications and you weigh out who to award what. So it's actually you guys who do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm curious where this funds is gonna come from. Is that already allocated from the general fund?
Yes.
So so you're asking to increase by 152 and we think with that amount, we're able to fill the gap that currently is now being supplied by the federal.
Yes, yes. Took the average of what are the current CDBG housing program subrecipients for the past couple of years. And we said, okay, on average, right? That's the annual amount they're getting awarded. So if we add that, we should be able to theoretically maintain, right, housing services at that level.
That's an important point to make.
Yes.
Is because we're using the average of what has been awarded in the past. I'm sure any of these grantees would like to have more funds and they can serve more people, because we actually have more vulnerable people than are currently being helped. So this isn't like some grand, oh my gosh, this is gonna solve all the problems in Cupertino because we're putting this in. It's backfilling money that we're losing. So we're staying at excuse me.
We're maintaining,
We're maintaining, yeah,
we're
we're
maintaining.
maintaining, we're not,
We have a hand raised from Vice Chair Narine.
oh, Vice Chair, would you like to make a comment, please?
Well, I basically just want to make a comment that I agree with Chair Cunningham's sentiments about how this is important. The question I had for Nikki is we know we have that the NOFA is coming up, right? The deadline is February.
Yes.
Is this going to be part of that? I know if this is a new one, will this be part of that new NOFA application?
It would be part of the next year, right? Because we have to do budgeting in advance, right? So
Okay.
right now, that NOFA is kind of set for the
Yeah,
upcoming.
okay.
But if
Okay.
we were to able funding increase approved, then it would be the next NOFA after that it would be affecting.
So that would be for the next fiscal year.
Yeah,
This would be for the next fiscal year.
yeah, not so for not for this current NOFA. It would be.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that then.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question,
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
Sure. Thank you.
Funding for this year
yeah.
is cut,
Well,
right? I mean, we know.
we don't have it yet, but we believe that our action plan has been accepted, right? And we're hoping that the federal government resumes working very soon, right? What we're talking about though is preparing basically for the worst, because this was year one and it's not been great. And so, yeah, right, pursuing a contingency plan for after that in order to ensure this long-term stability of our housing programs after. Yes.
So if it doesn't apply, this year's NOFA.
No, not this year's.
If it doesn't apply to, since it doesn't apply to this year's NOFA, and the funding hasn't been received for this year's NOFA. If we don't get it, then we're not talking about trying to have money available out of HSG funds.
So I should add, this year's NOFA is not on public services, right? It's only on the capital housing side. So it wouldn't apply to this year's
That's
NOFA.
right.
either way.
Talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, so
Thank you.
so this would all kind of take into effect with the next public service funding side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Good question.
Just, it sounds like the city is really offering to cover those funds that we're missing right now. Is there any other strategies where maybe other sources where you can secure those funds and maybe use the money that the city is generously, per se, donating to this funding being used in some other ways?
That's a great question, right? So if it's not the city, then you're probably looking at a state source. And the problem you always come with trying to do a one-to-one replacement when it comes to formula grant funding is, can this other grant do the same things as CDBG? Are they the same eligible allowed uses, right? And what you find is sometimes some programs don't fit in this other program, right? Where that could previously fit in CDBG otherwise. And so we can and we will obviously try to find alternative funding sources all the time. But the reason why local funds are very attractive is because you have a flexible use that you can use to make sure it's stable. You know what I mean? Like you can use it for these programs.
I'll clarify that this would be the housing commission's recommendation.
Yeah.
So until the city council approves that recommendation, not city's proposal yet, I think, Commissioner again mentioned not setting plan for covering the gap. So, but we'll keep it posted. It'll be part of the budget discussion. We'll have our justifications in there. Keep it posted.
We all know that under the current administration, all other cities are being affected. Is there kind of state doing, making some efforts to restore those funds that originally were meant to be delivered, but are not?
There have been some efforts from the states, right, to restore funds, but right now their priorities seem to be Medi-Cal and CalFresh, right? Food stamps and medicine, which I get it, right? So, but that doesn't mean that not everything, right, made it to, yeah, so the housing programs seem to be taken care of at the local level.
You have another question? Oh, okay, not hearing any further questions from anyone on the council, would anyone like to take a motion, please?
Chair, before we have a motion, can we go to public comment?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Do we have anyone, with their hands raised for public comment?
We have no hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, and I see no one present from the public, so, we can declare the public comment closed. And so at this time, I would ask if someone would make a motion for us to move forward.
Yeah, I can pass a motion to move forward.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I
I can
second.
second that.
Okay. Okay, here first, I hear a motion and a second. So now we can vote on the motion. Could we just read that motion out loud one last time before we vote?
The motion is to approve the resolution to city council to recommend an annual funding increase of $152,000 for a grand total of $281,000 with an annual CPI increase to the Human Services Grant.
Okay, thank you. Now can you take a vote?
Commissioner Jindy?
Aye.
Commissioner Sripathi?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones is absent. Vice Chair Narayan?
Aye.
Chair Cunningham?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously with Commissioner Jones absent.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we are going to move from this agenda item to staff and commission votes and reports, excuse me. And so staff would go first, and then we would ask Vice Chair Narayan to report back on the mayor's meeting.
Sure.
Pardon?
No reports from staff currently.
Oh, no, what's your staff? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so there was a meeting, last, oh God, I should have my thing here. The main comments basically were the mayor wanted to know what were the highlights, the pros and cons of, our commissions. And the points that really stood out were some commissions said there was not good, timely communications between the commissioners and the staff liaison. Of course, from our commission, I said Nikki was on top of everything and we agenda like so much ahead of time that we have time to look through it and make comments. So we were at an advantage there. So, but I think some commissions had that problem. The other item that stood out was there were projects that are overlapping the commission's duties, like I mean, we've also felt that, right? Like between housing and planning and so far, but it extends to other commissions as well. So there was a discussion about how there could be like maybe subgroups between different commissions to work around. But I think in the end, the consensus was you bring in too many commissions, it's just not gonna go anywhere. So again, the point was you could attend meetings of other commissions and gather the points, make recommendations, but then leave the main decisions and the discussions to the specific commission itself, just to avoid confusion. So that was the final thing. And from our side, I did bring up the point about having a renter on our commission panel. And we do have like a couple of renters already, but the mayor was not very, she said it may not be very feasible because the renters are of different scale, right? Like economic scale, like it could be a low income renter versus a middle income, or could be a high income. People rent for like $10,000 a month kind of a space. So her point was it will be hard to make it a rule. So that's something that may be off the table, but that was the main consensus. So those are the main points of the meeting.
May, Chair, may,
Sure.
to add to that point about currently. There is a consideration for the applicants to be renters, thing one of it. It's
Right.
not spelled as a separate item, but it is one of consideration.
Right, and there's like a whole bunch of different,
Correct, seniors,
Yeah.
homeless persons.
right, there's really quite a number of them.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I think the consideration, I know this isn't an action. I was just gonna say that on taking that was that 60% of the housing is homeowned and 40% is renters, and with all homeowners, except for this time, I understand, but in general, homeowners. And so wanting to get perspectives, different perspectives. And we already had, in that case, we had a senior and we had a young person and all that stuff. So it does rotate, doesn't it? But for a long time, it didn't. For a long time, it was all homeowners all the time. So, and yeah, understand that probably have to be discussed, probably to discuss all those things. Thank you for bringing that comment back. Very helpful. It's good to have feedback from the mayor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see. So you know staff, does anyone else have a meeting that they attended that they want to share with the commission? No, not this time, not this time, okay. And so we have future agenda setting is the next action item. Are there any future agenda items that people wanted to throw out, not for discussion, not a discussion item, but to throw out for possible adding to the agenda for another time? Hearing none, I would say that we can close this item.
So I wasn't sure whether we can bring this up, the article that I sent you about Rice losing
Yeah.
some of the BMR units or dropping some of the BMR units.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure whether it's up to us to discuss, or is there anything to be discussed on that? or-
So I did take a look at your guys' chart, right? And you guys do have the ability to make recommendations to the planning commission as well as the city council on affordable housing developments.
Okay,
Meaning stuff like Mary Avenue and Wolf Road and stuff like that. When it comes to market rate developments that just have BMR included as their inclusionary, that will be considered a market rate development. So unfortunately, that pretty much squarely lands underneath the planning commission, but you are of course always welcome to attend and make a comment. On behalf of yourself. You can always do that thing where you say, I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a resident, but I am also a housing commissioner, just so, yeah. I think that's one way you can do.
yeah, that's a really good idea. I will note that last meeting, Commissioner Scharf attended, and he was saying that he was attending as part of his duties as a planning commissioner. And I remember back several years ago, there was actually a planning commissioner with the duty of attending the housing commission. But that had stopped being done for so long that I had forgotten until he mentioned it. So I don't know if they had decided to renew that. Maybe he had not heard about our meeting or something, but in any case, that's the only one I know of. I mean, I don't know about the other commissions that have someone that originally in their stuff that they do, they have an assignment to come and then share back with their, but I think certainly the idea of, if you're interested in the planning commission ongoing, love to hear this. Okay. I think, do you have anything more to say on future agenda setting? from staff or anyone? If not, I think that we can adjourn. What time is it? 6:54? I adjourn.